Hello, everyone. I'm Doug Grant, one of the partners at insurancecanada.ca. Welcome to another of our Technology in Action webinars. This one is titled Applying AI to Transform the Processing of Medical Claims Records. I look forward to the presentation by Connor Atchison, founder and CEO, and Jenna Earnshaw, head of revenue at WiseDocs. WiseDocs is a new and emerging insurtech startup, as noted in our insurtech spotlight. I have always been a strong believer that people innovate and technology is merely a tool. It enables. Technology may be underlying today's topic, but people brought it to life, people use it, and it contributes to people's experience. Personally, I have observed and helped insurance people take advantage of the ever-developing stream of richer, better, faster developments in technology for a long time, actually all of my career for that matter. They have found opportunities to improve pretty much all aspects of the insurance business, from marketing through distribution, underwriting, claims, and reinsurance. At the next level up, above process and user experience improvements, changes to the fundamental business of insurance are emerging, including marketplaces, ecosystems, insurance on demand, embedded insurance, and more. Speaking about ecosystems and technology together, in a sense, today's topic is at the intersection of health tech and insurtech. But central to each of these changes that are occurring today and tomorrow is a focus on the customer, with an improved user experience leading to more new customers and enhanced loyalty. Following the presentation today, there will be time for some questions. Please enter your questions for Connor and Jenna into the Q&A box. Conversely, if you have any technical issues, please enter that into the chat. There are numerous trends that affect insurance. The obvious ones, which we hear so frequently, is the extent to which consumers are becoming increasingly digital and have a whole new set of accompanying preferences. Through a globally connected world, most people have access to other people, businesses, services, most anywhere. The insurance industry has paid attention to the customer experience for some time now. More recently, there's an increasing focus on both staff and partner experience, which only makes sense as people in those realms are also consumers and have similar expectations. With the focus on overall satisfaction, many insurance businesses and those who provide services or technology to them are addressing opportunities for improvement. By automating even some steps of a process, two benefits may emerge. The individual managing the process becomes more efficient, and the time to process a transaction can be reduced, a contributor to better satisfaction. Of course, this applies to not only to simple transaction, an insurance quote, for example, it also applies to what may be very long-tailed transactions, such as a bodily injury or other serious medical claim. That is really the focus for today's presentation. It is about innovating to improve the processing of medical claim records. Our speakers today are Connor Atchison and Jenna Earnshaw. I look forward to their presentation and answers to questions following. I will now stop sharing my screen and ask Samantha to share and begin with the WiseDocs introduction. So Connor or Jenna, go ahead while I do that what I said I would.
Thanks for having us on the webinar today, Doug. I really appreciate it and excited to talk more about where we see some of the trends moving in the medical claim space. I'll kick it off with a quick background and intro for myself. I'm the founder and CEO, and the journey started a few years ago based off my experience in the federal government, where I spent a majority of my time over a decade specifically in health administration. I'll hand over to Jenna.
Thanks so much, Connor. Great to be here as well. My name is Jenna Earnshaw, and I am the head of revenue here at WiseDocs. I've spent the past 10 years working and scaling early stage companies, and so really excited to be on this journey with Connor and the team.
So really, to provide a little bit more background and why, we're on this journey and why it really is important for us and what we believe in really trying to push and innovate within the insurance ecosystem, it started from firsthand experience. So again, working within the health administration field, health services, I've seen a lot of inefficiencies with the medical record, how it was, assessed, looked at, reviewed, aggregated, and it was really a major pain point. And then, working through trying to find, lean methodologies and better processes, it really struck me as, why can't this be automated? Why can't we start harnessing artificial intelligence and various technology stacks to find efficiencies? And then along that journey, I actually had to go through the process myself through short-term disability. I was honorably discharged from the military after a lengthy service. And I really seen the pain. I seen, being backlogged and losing that autonomy and waiting for, decisions to be made based on a medical record. And that struck me as there has to be a change within the system. And that's where the journey began. And I also then concurrently had a family member going through a tort case from negligence and an accident, automobile accident. So I got to see that firsthand as well. And putting all that together, it struck me as there has to be a new initiative, a new innovation, and something that we can do to give back an hour, a day, a month, even a year. If we can speed up that process end to end, not only can we empower the claimant, the insurers, all of the ecosystem, whether that be a clinician, a lawyer, a case manager, this is all integral and tied. And if we can find a way to push that, everyone wins within that space. So our mission is really simple. We just look at, how do we eliminate human arbitrage? How do we empower the end user so that they have more effective use of time, enjoy their job more, find better insights within a record, adjust or review a claim in a more timely manner that, again, impacts the entire ecosystem on time savings, on cost savings, and just overall better outcomes. So I'll talk a little bit about how we see the industry and how it's been shifting. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that using artificial intelligence and understanding machine learning models and algorithms, heuristics, and incorporating this into a cloud-based or on-prem solution really allows us to go from that old way of doing things with bankers boxes and scanning and trying to digitize unstructured records into something that can then automate and empower the end user. And what we see really is, how do we start changing the dynamic and the value within the ecosystem for everyone? And we'll use an example. What if we can take this unstructured medical record and we have a claimant with heart disease? Well, how do we know the supporting correlations, or are there things that we're not picking up on to provide better value, better care, and arrive at a better conclusion, such as there could be renal issues, there could be high blood pressure, is there comorbidities like diabetes? These all impact the end user to try to get a better understanding around this claimant. And I think that's where we have to start looking at where artificial intelligence is driving the innovation, where it's driving the industry, and where we're going to see a lot more efficiencies. We're going to find a lot more value-based care that we can actually transfer and keep that within the system, rather than a race to the bottom on pricing. And I think that's really what technology will enable in the next few years. And we've seen that, as Doug alluded to in the intro. There are so many shifts happening, and how do we continue that, and how do we keep that momentum at the core to keep driving that change? And some of the things, go for it, Jeff.
No, just to build on that a little bit as well. The industry that we're in and what existed before a platform like WiseDocs was a lot of manual labor. And here in Canada, because of HIPAA regulations and laws, medical records have to stay within Canada. And so a lot of our Canadian customers and organizations that we talk to, the only way that they were able to get through medical records and are able to find key information in these medical records is by having people do that manually. In America, it's a little bit different. We see a split between organizations that are either, again, doing it manually and having people individually go through page after page of these unstructured medical documents, or turning to offshore organizations and actually sending these medical records to these offshore organizations and companies so that they can go through the records on their behalf and at least begin to make sense of them, so that the process of then doing the medical review can be quicker and smarter. So it's interesting to see where the industry was and where the industry is going with being able to harness technology like artificial intelligence.
So as I alluded to earlier, and I'll let Jenna chime in on this as well, the ecosystem is shifting and we're all integral in our own way. It depends on, how that medical record is being viewed, whether it's a disability claim, it could be an auto claim, it could be a workers' comp claim. There's so many different facets, but at the core, the medical record is the baseline. And depending on how you're looking at that record, how do we start shifting and making that custom configurable workflow for the end user? And I think the more we can get behind that and we start integrating that, we're going to see even faster shifts in innovation, and the trends will continue. And I think collectively, that's where we're going to see that acceleration. Every vantage point, every person's unique user experience tying in on top of that medical record is going to be game changing on how the industry shifts over the next few years.
Yeah, and to build on that as well, when we look at this entire ecosystem, we often see the same medical record can be handled by a law firm, can be handled by a third-party assessor, it can be handled by the carrier. That record may have gone through underwriting within the carrier and then handled by the claims team, and then may have been assigned to a case manager and is working with a case team. So this medical record just passes all the way around this ecosystem, and it has many different versions. It's been copied and faxed and photocopied time and time again. But all of these different organizations in the insurance ecosystem have to review that record and have to understand what is happening, what is that patient's history, what are the things that are important to review, what are the right treatment plans for this patient based off of past history. So what's been really interesting is just kind of looking at how the same record can be passed around the industry and how different types of organizations can use that record in different ways. And that's really what we've tried to bring to life with WiseDocs, is offering different types of functions and features depending on the use case, depending on what this individual organization actually needs to be able to get out of that medical record. So it's just interesting how much it kind of passes around within this. Yeah, so speaking a little bit more about some of the benefits of using WiseDocs and some of the successes that our customers are having today. Really, we see a very, very significant uptick on being able to process records quicker, being able to process records with more accuracy, and being able to, at some times, cut the costs of manually having to do this internally. So we see that today. Right now, our customers are able to onboard onto the platform very, very quickly. We have customers that have onboarded as quick as 1 week. It's very easy, and I think this is something that we've really strived for as we continue to build the platform, is making it as easy as possible to use. So customers today are able to log into WiseDocs. They're able to upload their messy, unstructured medical records. WiseDocs then processes those records. We're able to extract key information from those records. So for example, our chronology and indexing product, we're extracting the title, the date, the author, all of the data points that help our customers understand the actual chain of events of what's happened with that individual's history of health. And then they're able to export and use those documents as well. And something that Connor touched on is just the configurability and the different outputs. And again, in this industry, we see that the same medical record, there's a lot of different ways that that could be looked at, depending on the assessment that's being done, depending on the individual that's actually looking at the medical record. Is this the adjuster? Is this someone with some medical experience? Is this an assessment that's being done? Are we looking at this kind of from a legal perspective too? So really kind of delivering on that flexibility of being able to offer lots of different formats and lots of different kind of features based off of the needs of our customers today.
And I think too, to add to that is, when you bring that value, not just to our customers, that goes throughout the entire ecosystem, as I alluded to before. And, that passes to the claimant for a quicker resolution, passes to the carrier, for a better outcome, whether that be cost or quality. It passes to everyone, just like the records being shared. And that's what we're setting out to do, to try to shift awareness and try to really make a difference in the industry. And I believe as more solutions come on board and we can find integrations and we can make it seamless, we're going to see that as a force multiplier. And that's what's game changing, I think, in the next few years. It's a very exciting time to be in the insurance space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know something that this particular one touches on as well is just around kind of the work that goes into preparing a medical record and how difficult that is. And sometimes we use the analogy of, imagine getting a book and tearing out the back of the book and putting all of the pages in the wrong order, and then having to, as quickly as possible, put them in the right order. None of them have page numbers. There's no chapters. There's no clear beginning and end to anything that you're looking at, and figure out how long that will take. It's not easy work. It's not enjoyable to have to sift through hundreds, sometimes thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of pages and try and make sense of them in a quick and efficient way so that you can make the best decision and get that individual on the right care path. So that is something, delivering on a product and empowering and helping people to do a lot of the heavy lifting and the work that is typically very, very time consuming. Are you on mute, Connor?
No, I'm good.
Oh,
yeah.
I think we just skipped over a slide.
Yeah, no, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, and again, just kind of what I talked about briefly. Where can we actually change, I guess, the ideology around how things are currently being done? And our big hairy goal is, if we can actually become the standard, if we can shift how the entire industry is looking at making more effective, more efficient, and more value-added decisions, again, it has a knock-on effect for everyone, and everyone wins. So that's really our goal, like to have that impact and really move the needle. And again, I won't beat it to death, but yeah, exciting time to be in the insurance space, and we're looking forward to keep doing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And from a WiseDocs perspective and the future of where we really see us being able to take this, looking at the medical record, being able to extract more information and keep going one level deeper of being able to show if it's anything from medication or diagnoses or treatment plans, again, to surface that information as quickly as possible and make it much easier for an individual that's reviewing the record to access what they need as quickly as possible. And it's really interesting. I mean, between the US and with Canada and how different the industry is, and the similarities that come with that. But really what we've seen is the industry has always just worked in one way. And we're starting to scratch the surface in presenting maybe a better way of doing this, and actually using AI and using machine learning and using automation can get organizations there much, much quicker.
I think too, it's one of those things where it doesn't have to be as painful as it has been. And if we can make it less tedious and a little bit more enjoyable, that's a great impact.
Well, thank you very much, Jenna and Connor. Very, very much appreciated. A note to people in the audience, please ask any questions that you might have. Just put them in the Q&A panel, and we'll get to those now. So looking forward to some discussion. The first question I guess I would like to ask personally, and it was something that came up in a previous discussion, and that was around looking at the data and being able to extract medical insights. And I'm just not sure if that was alluded to in some sense. It may well have been in some of your comments, but is that something you could maybe expand on? Because to me, paper versus something digital opens up a whole different field there.
Yeah, I think when you really look at taking an unstructured document, so we're taking something from paper-based, scanning it, it's completely unstructured, basically unusable, we'll use a PDF, and then getting that ingested and normalized using the power of AI. Like I said, it could be intelligent character recognition, it can be machine learning models, algorithms that tie in, putting it through a pipeline. That's where we can start really enriching what's there. So we can start seeing those insights where, maybe they're, a point in time, we see a disability claim, an individual, has an attestation that they've never smoked, but then later we see that they have heart disease and they're a pack-a-day smoker. So you start seeing these insights in a way like what actually is missing in this entire story, and it creates a better narrative around that claimant and that patient. And that's really what then can be brought back to a clinician. It could be an attorney, it could be an underwriter to have better policies, an adjuster, and everyone's going to look at it differently depending on how and what they're trying to garner from that. So that's really what we're setting out to do from the Insights product, and we're really excited to kind of keep that moving and open up more segments and more opportunities. And that's that feedback loop. The more we engage with clients, we talk to individuals in different spaces, we start learning more and more about how we can apply those applications. Does that answer your question, Doug?
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to ask another one, if I may. Do I have the opportunity as a user of the system, and I'm not sure what implementation it might require, to share with those other parties directly or digitally, or is the transfer of information between those different parties still accomplished the old way by creating a document and sending it over and letting them ingest it into whatever they have to eat it?
Yeah, so you can do one of two things. You can actually have the output and you can share that with any of the parties that you want to share that with. And then the other one is direct integrations through APIs. So it is actually seamless.
I love those three letters, the API sense.
Makes life a lot easier.
I think it's AI growing up, just matured a bit or something. Anyway, we do have some great audience questions, so we'll just start off with those. One's rather intriguing about the 750 pages per hour. I'm presuming that is the ingesting process, as opposed to some other measure of some other activity. And that would be independent, I assume, of the number of users, or is there a correlation between the ingesting capability and the number of users that can be on the system at any time, kind of thing?
I see Jenna shaking her head. I'll let her take that one.
I'm just shaking a lot. So as many users as needed can access the platform at the same time, and we also process the pages simultaneously. So say for example, a user logs in at 10 a.m. in the morning, they could upload 3 separate 750 page documents, and those would all begin processing at the same time. So it's not dependent on how many users are on the platform, and it's not dependent on how many files are being uploaded.
Oh, okay, thank you, that helps. And I think one question that kind of correlates to that when we're talking about capacity and so on is, what's the cost structure of using the platform? Is that something you would like to talk about or willing to talk about now to some level, or is this something you'd prefer to deal with one-on-one?
Yeah, at a high level, we kind of price how the industry expects to pay in many regards. It's primarily looking at the pages that are being processed, looking at the files that are being processed. So that's typically how we would.
Okay. So I'll ask whoever was wanting the answer to that question to get in touch with you directly, Jenna. And just as an aside, I will be sending a note out, maybe not today, but certainly by sometime tomorrow, to indicate where the recording of this will be available. And I will include a contact information for Jenna so that anybody who receives those messages can get in touch with her directly, and she can either answer the question or pass you to someone else who can. On the ingesting process, bringing that unstructured data in, is there any accuracy scoring, if you will? I presume that you've done a lot of that in your development and testing process, but is there an ongoing capability in the system?
Yeah, it's constantly improving. So the great thing with artificial intelligence is it learns from itself once you've actually set it up. So in brand new documents, brand new variables, it actually has to just be modeled, and then over time that improves. But once it has enough ingestion and data points, it's as good or better than a human from an accuracy standpoint.
Okay, great. And that's great news to hear that it continues to improve, which I guess is kind of the underlying intent of machine learning and so on, isn't it? So,
and maybe just to add to that a little bit. So a lot of our early development on the product, we used clinicians to actually train the models. So we haven't come and attacked this problem from a very broad perspective. We've been very specific, using a clinical team who understand the clinical context of a document to do that training. And that's something that we continue to do as well, is train the machine learning using medical intelligence and clinical expertise.
Great. So somebody's looked in a lot of different angles and pulled them all together. So great news. A couple of questions here touching on security, and just wondered about that. You did mention you could be on-prem or in cloud. And so there's a couple of questions around security measures, et cetera.
Yeah, I think at a high level, you have to look at security. When we started this, and coming from the federal government, operational security at the forefront, PHI at the forefront, we really built it in mind of, cybersecurity first. And that's everything from how you set your infrastructure up to, the compliance and regulatory components, from your PIPEDA, HIPAA, PHIPAA, you've got regulations on California, CCPR and GDPR. So there's just so many things you have to be aware of, and we've built that all in mind. And then from compliance standpoints, working at SOC 2 Type 2, and then obviously all of your instances are isolated. Data is stored that's domain specific to the area. So US data is in the United States. Canadian data is in its own instance in Canada. There's no bleeding of that information. So again, we've built it very robustly, but with a ton of security in mind, because that is at the forefront of what we do.
Another question then extends this, and I think you may have answered it to some extent, Connor, earlier when you mentioned APIs and its integration between your system and a claims platform that any one of the industry participants may have installed internally. Yeah,
so the great thing is with the API, like we have an open API that actually, it requires maybe a little bit of a lift, but it's not something that, we have to build one off. And then every system's different. So you do have legacy systems or back office systems that, they're just built, 10, 20 years ago. And then you have to look at workarounds. But for the most part, it's quite agile. And that's the way we want to move forward, so we can cater to a wider audience. But yeah, that's kind of how we look at APIs, integrations, and try to keep it a little bit more agnostic to support the end users.
Gotcha. A question around underwriting. Now, you did mention, Connor, I believe, underwriters a couple of times in your comments, and the question is really around whether WiseDocs would work for underwriting as well, and how that would fit into. I'm not sure whether they're implying a completely different stream for a different process, but I'll let you at least take a crack at that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So where we've delivered and built out the Insights product, it can really help from a morbidity and a mortality component with underwriting. So you can actually get that, like I said, that narrative, that really rich point in time to really figure out what's at hand for that claimant and that policy. So yeah, it actually can be used for underwriting as well. And yeah, we're working with a number of great partners to really build that out and make it as specific and usable for the industry.
Okay, great. And finally, I think the last question that we have is someone's asking if they could see a copy of a summary of Whitestocks. Would you care to comment on that, Jenna? Maybe just, I'm not sure what the opportunity, obviously I can reach out to you directly, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. They can reach out and we'd be happy to show them some of the outputs that we have.
Great. All right. And I think, Connor, you did mention where the data is stored, both US data in the States and Canadian data in Canada, et cetera, regulations around all that sort of stuff. And you did talk about the security as well. So I think given that we're now at 1:30, I think we've actually come to the conclusion. So I just have a few remarks here. It won't take but a moment. And then we'll close up. So that brings us to the end of our webinar today. Thank you, Connor and Jenna, for sharing information about Wisestocks and how you've improved the processing of medical claims records. That was very interesting. Clearly another example of technology in action, helping Wisestocks move along its own strategic path, which Connor described, and its customers and their prospects to work smarter and more efficiently. We appreciate your material and illustrations. Thanks to you in the audience for joining us today. I hope you have taken away some helpful information. We will send out a note probably tomorrow about the recording so you can review and share as you wish. Any comments, of course, about this webinar or other webinars that we might do are much appreciated. Our next webinar is scheduled now. I don't think it's on the website just yet, for the 13th of October, and it will be in the commercial line space for input information and through to underwriting and quoting, et cetera. So, and finally, the turmoil in the world continues, as we all see it every day on the news. Of course, we still have the COVID pandemic, major wars, inflation, and climate-related disasters everywhere, it seems. Please continue to be part of the solution. Do what's needed to keep yourself and others around you, and around the world for that matter, safe and healthy. I wish each of you a good day and a good fall season, with a final thanks to Connor and Jenna. I very much appreciate it. That concludes today's webinar. Goodbye, everyone.